When this boy meets world, boy meets world. When this boy meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bruh?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World,
When it's bruh meets world.
your Boy Meets World fan cast. I'm Ceej.
And I'm your boy Tony Curtis.
Tony T, what's up?
We just started season 2. I
Yes.
can't tell you how excited I am for that.
Dude,
Yo,
it's
this
actually completely different.
It's completely different for one. I'm already completely over the first season and ready to move on. I loved immediately just saying this. I don't want to get too much into the episode, but how little we saw of their family dynamic and how little I cared.
Yes.
Like I was just completely on board for everything that was happening in this episode, and I wanted more of it.
I completely agree. It's actually really funny because I got so much joy from watching this episode. Like seriously, like the excitement that I had.
Yeah, and to me, these are the episodes I remember watching more of too. So they're
Correct.
more entwined with my memories and my childhood. And I just feel like this is the more exciting period because this is their coming of age time, and this is way more relatable, I think, from our perspective. Just that awkwardness of puberty and starting high school and like what all that means, and you're finding your place. Ugh, I love everything that happened. In this
There's
episode.
that, and then also, can I just say, we get into like this season, we get into some adult things that I was not prepared for.
Yeah. There's some stuff that they're jumping into that I was just like, really, for 7th graders? Okay.
Okay, we're doing this.
Yeah. Um but yeah, so I'm super excited about this season. I loved that I did not hear that bullshit first season theme song, and I will never hear it. I'm so glad I was correct about that.
That's
But
really
yeah,
good.
it's a more mature setting, it's a more mature tone, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, all right. So, speaking of changes, much like how this season was different for the show, TC and I are going to be including some changes to the podcast for our second season.
We're evolving, guys.
ex-
We're evolving with the show.
Exactly. So we're doing a little restructuring things. The show layout will be a little bit different. We'll include some new segments, and this season we'll even have a few guests that we're inviting. So look forward to that.
I'm so excited about the guests. I'm so excited to get different perspectives towards this show, which I think is only going to prove to be more and more relevant as we go on with this season of the series. Super stoked for it.
Yeah. Fantastic things. Okay, so our first change is going to be our Tell Me About It. Now, in this season of the Tell Me About It, I'm going to give a brief, full summary of the episode, and TC and I are just going to give our first responses and kind of take it from there. So, the Tell Me About It.
Tell me about it.
There you go. All right. It's Corey's first day of high school, and Corey informs his parents that he is not afraid because he has a plan. After consulting with older brother Eric, Corey feels secure in his understanding of his place in high school and intends to befriend the toughest guy in school, Harley Keiner. In exchange for
Strong opinions about this right off the bat, but
right. In exchange for this information, Corey also agrees to keep his distance from Eric at the new school, allowing Eric to keep his cool junior persona. Once at school, Corey and his best friend Sean are met with a bunch of changes they weren't expecting, including older girls, a more developed Topanga, a young new teacher named Mr. Turner, and having different class schedules for the first time. Corey attempts to befriend Harley, gets off to a rocky start when Corey accidentally gets them both sent to the principal office. It is there that Corey discovers another surprise. His elementary school teacher, Mr. Feeney, is now acting principal at this new school and his new history teacher. After being sent to the principal's office, Harley vows to beat up Corey after school, where Corey is at first fearful, but is convinced to stand his ground. In doing so, Eric and Mr. Turner come to his rescue, and Corey lives to fight another day. So, what are your thoughts?
First off, there's so much about this. To me, I think I love that they're in high school. We discussed this a little bit last season, but apparently at this school, 7th grade is high school, which I think proves to be problematic, especially in the next episode. But
yes.
I'll hold that off. But yeah, having 7th graders mixed in with high school, to me, there's nothing but problems that can come from that. The fact that Corey knows that like he needs to have a strategy to survive, I think is proof
Yes.
that he probably doesn't belong in a high school,
Yeah.
but that's just my thoughts of that.
Also, my first impressions, especially when we get to the high school, is what year is this high school in? Are we in the 70s or like 60s?
Yeah.
Like, where are you? It
To
doesn't make
me,
sense.
this high school exists in the memory of Michael Jacobs. Like, this
Yes.
is what he remembers high school to be when he was in school. And
Exactly.
this was that weird change between like the 60s and the 80s where like technology hadn't evolved so much that you couldn't like basically have the same story structure. Like we couldn't do that now because of cell phones.
Yeah,
But
correct.
there was nothing that prevented Michael Jacobs from basically recreating his childhood in the 90s. So I feel like that's what we were seeing.
Okay, yeah, that makes way more sense because I kept looking at this. It's like, why is Harley a greaser? Why does everyone have
Harley,
this
you know why
accent?
Harley's a greaser? We talked about this because the creator was obsessed with Happy Days, and that's basically Fonzie.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
is. It's a really poor man's Fonzie, but still.
it's but yeah, that whole thing was weird. He's like 30 years old. Seeing Harley next to Mr. Turner, I was like, oh, they're the same age.
Oh yeah, and we're kind of getting into this. So another segment that we're gonna have, whenever we get new characters, is a segment called Roll Call, where we go through each of these new characters that we're brought into, and I'm really excited about this because
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and list the characters because I do want to refer to them quite a bit.
yeah. So in
Who do
this
we got?
new episode, in this season, we're gonna get the teacher, our English teacher, Mr. Jonathan Turner. Harley Keiner, which is the school's bully, so to speak.
One of the school's bullies,
One of the school's bullies, and
the most feared.
his two henchmen, Joey the Rat, which he's not meant. His name is not given in this entire episode. I kept waiting for them to say it, but they never bring up Joey's name. But we just know it'll be Joey, and then Frankie, who
Frankie the Enforcer.
I do love Frankie. There are some things that are wrong, but at the exact same time, I'm really excited to get into this.
I'm so excited for Frankie. So talking about this episode, one of the things I loved is right from the beginning of the episode, Corey is talking about his strategy for school. And what we gathered from this is that this whole season, the premise of it is where do I fit in, which I just thought was a really relatable topic for that first year you get to high school. You're looking for your place, where do I belong? The fact that Corey had to like, oh, I talked to Eric and I got notes on how to fit in, what teachers to avoid and who to befriend. Like he is just looking for his place. And I feel that throughout the season, every episode will kind of center around this idea of where do I fit in this new environment.
I get that. I think what I like about it is that Corey kind of went into this with humble expectations, which means that he has like the best thing. He's starting off on the best foot because like he was like, I know where my place is. I am scum. I'm at the bottom, and I'm not even going to try to like. There's so many people who try to go into high school being the cool person, or like they're trying to make sure that they hit all the right moves. And Corey just understands that he's not going to do that.
Well, what Corey decides to do is what I call the prison technique.
Of course, yes.
Is I'm gonna befriend the most badass kid in this place.
Here's my plan. Today I make friends with the most feared and influential senior in high school, Harley Keiner. And in one master stroke, I go from lowly first-year victim to Harley's most trusted advisor.
Which, to me, I just came off of seeing Deadpool 2. I couldn't get over just how, like, tropey this concept is. But I thought it was really funny that Corey just, like, hey, I'm going to be this guy's bitch. I don't care, because I'd rather do that than have to get beat up for the next 6 years, I guess, whatever they're in school for.
Hey, don't knock it until you try it. That is completely my prison approach. If I ever go, sign me up. I've already made that very clear.
Oh, I know what my prison technique would be. I would just be the guy who just doesn't wipe.
Yeah, see, everyone says that, but it's prison. It's been a while. My whole thing is to go in with it. As you say, at least this way I get to choose.
I'd much rather have the rash.
Like a prison The Bachelor type situation is what I'm going for.
Oh, you're gonna do a Bachelor prison? You're just like, today I give my fruit cup to
exactly.
Jerome.
Thank you. This is absolutely terrible. We do not mean to minimize prison life.
Oh my
Anyway,
god.
okay, so yeah, let's talk about it. All right, so we kind of introduced these characters, but I just want to say we're going to take a moment. Mr. Jonathan Turner, can I tell you,
Oh,
when
okay,
this
yeah.
man entered my television screen,
Now, here's a great thing because I felt that Jonathan Turner was specifically brought in to bridge the age group between like the parents and the kids. Here's like this hunky, like young stud to like the 20, 30 something crowd.
yeah, no, I agree with that because that's what I kept looking at. I kept looking at Mr. Turner being like, who were you brought on for? Because there are a lot of emotions going on right now. And
He's a hunky dude, yes?
he is very hunky. He is like, this is 90s. He's in dated clothes and at the exact same time. I cannot take my eyes off of him.
Yes, because even with the white man's jerry curl he has on,
Yes,
he is
it
still
works.
looking like he's a character from like Melrose Place. Like he looks like he belongs on a different show in the 90s, but definitely exclusively from the 90s.
Yeah, again, everything about him, his complete outfit is dated, and even like the single earring, he kind of has like the Howie early '90s Howie Mandel hair. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah, and strolls into school, sunglasses stayed on the entire time he was indoors. That's how I knew he was a badass. And I was just like, how are like Corey confused this guy for a student. So why are other people confusing him for a student? Because he's clearly not dressed like a teacher.
yeah, but also Corey, we've like established that Corey's not the brightest here, so yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that he immediately makes a great impression. One of the things I said that I thought was cool was Sean says something right before Mr. Turner comes in, where he's like, "Oh, there's not a teacher that I can't bring down," and then that's when Mr. Turner enters,
Which
which I
is
think is great because Mr. Turner and Sean's relationship becomes so complex and so like he becomes his guardian at a certain point. So it was just really interesting that that's how we're brought in, is by Sean going, "Oh, who I can take down whoever comes
yeah, it's a
next,"
little
and
bit
then
of
he comes next.
foreshadowing in this.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the things that we kind of hit on with the way that they're bringing in these characters like Harley and Mr. Turner is we are maturing. We are getting older, and the entire show has this feel. It is a more mature version of the show that we had seen, and I just like the boys, the actors themselves are older. They make very awkward but point mention of Topanga developing over the summer.
yes.
Uh,
When there was, it was really funny because okay, so one of the bits is that Sean is wearing on glued on sideburns.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so Topanga's like there and she's like, "Hi guys," and then she kind of walks away and they're staring right at her ass, and she's like,
What are you staring at?
Nothing. New blouse?
Yeah, I got it over the summer.
Summer was very good to you.
Yeah, well, at least what I grew is real.
Exactly, exactly.
which I just thought was just such a great bit, and also a reflection that the show is noticing.
Yeah, exactly.
Topanga's throwing them things.
They're getting older, and I think that they're just giving us all types of hints that we will be dealing with more mature content.
Totally.
And this is no longer your kid show that you saw last week. Cherry bombs is not the biggest problem we have so right now.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
At any point in this episode did you go, "Wow, I wish Minkus was here"?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, not at all, right?
Yeah, I didn't.
Like
I didn't think of
such
Minkus
a huge
once.
player in the first season. He was our favorite character from the first season, and he is gone, and we didn't even blink.
Exactly, and I think that I believe that that's why he was written off. He just didn't have a place here. Like they even have the two nerd characters that
Which is so funny, by the way. It's such a funny bit throughout the show that, like, every time, right before Corey and Sean enter a room, there are two nerds that are basically the nerdier version of them, and they open up a door, hit them down, and then say exactly what they say. But which I thought was interesting is that the entire episode is about Corey not wanting to get bullied by Harley Keiner, when him and Sean are kind of bullying these other nerds.
That's what I was going to say.
Episode, low-key.
Yeah. They're unknowingly making these two gentlemen's experience in First Day worse, and they kind of show that these kids have the exact same journey. Speaking of other kids, I did have a problem when they walked into school and you see these kids and there's a boy just in his underwear.
There's a kid, completely in his boxers and socks. That's all he has on.
And he's like, they took my clothes. And I'm like, all right, so again, instant rape vibes. I don't know what was going on in other people's high schools, but this is not okay. Like, they just took all this boy's clothes and have him walking around. And I get that it's used for comedic bit, but at the exact same time, when we always compare things like that are acceptable then and not acceptable now, just taking a dude's a seventh grader's clothes and have him walk around in just underwear, nothing good's coming from that.
This is a note that I took consistently, was how, like, this approach to bullying, because clearly bullying is a massive problem at this school. Kids are having to, like, prep for the bullying at the school before they attend. And it's just such a 90s approach to make bullying like this humorous rite of passage instead of just like accepted abuse.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's even a point where like so I mean I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but Frankie I'm sorry, Harley Keiner burst into the cafeteria and is like,
all right, who took the last piece of chicken? I'm gonna kill the guy who took the last piece of chicken.
There are students there. There are teachers in this cafeteria. No one says anything to this guy who is threatening death. And that's the other thing I noticed. It's not just, I'm going to beat you up. It's, I'm going to kill you.
Exactly.
The verbiage they use.
Exactly.
You can never get away with that shit now.
Exactly. And again, these are things that I think it should be noted because, first of all, I do want to make it very clear. This episode is hilarious. Like,
it's so funny. There's so many funny bits throughout the whole thing.
But I think, especially the chicken part, when he does come in and he's like, "Who ate the last piece of chicken?" And Ben Savage just kind of drops it, the chicken leg, like into the fountain. The comedic timing and the bits are just great. But I do think it's important to note that there are just messages that they're subtly giving that don't deliver the message they're trying to say.
Speaking of messages, when we meet Frankie the Enforcer for the first time, so Corey and Sean are walking in school, and then they're like, "Oh, bullies." Frankie comes up, starts bullying them, and he's like, "Why are you in my way?" And then Corey says something like, "Oh, if I were in my class, I wouldn't be in your way." To which Frankie
responds,
looks confused.
I think he's saying that if he was someplace else, he wouldn't be here. What? Saying I'm gay? No, I didn't say that. Come on, let's finish him off. No, I need to be alone with my thoughts.
And it was like, whoa, that came out of
no
nowhere.
one said you were gay. What? Where is that coming from?
That was one of those things where, like, now we would totally, like, if this was made today, we would totally bring that moment and, like, develop that character a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like he would have a whole story arc about, like, being comfortable with his sexuality and all this other stuff.
So this is what I wanted to ask you, because are they trying to say that Frankie is gay, or was that just a moment of, like, unprovoked gay panic?
I think so. It's hard because this is the 90s and homophobia is part of the comedic bits and tropes. It's hard to say whether or not they were trying to make a statement about the character or if they were just using it. Or, as you were saying, if Michael Jacobs was just like, I knew a bully who was like this, who turned out to be gay. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly where they were going with it, but I will say, as a gay man, I laughed hard. I laughed hard
One of
because
the
it
things we
came out
do
of
know
nowhere.
is that he does end up liking women. So he does.
Yeah.
He does end up liking a girl. So that's why I just wanted to ask to see if your initial response for that was more of a gay panic, or if it was you think he's revealing his character arc.
We also find out a lot about, I mean, we're kind of giving spoilers, but with Frankie is shown to be a very sensitive character and a very sensitive man. And this is just like one of these journeys that we're going to go on later in the series. But I think for this particular episode, they didn't even really think that through. I think we are introducing all of these kind of tropey characters. Frankie is like this big, large, intimidating bully. So I guess a little bit of the gay panic part, and everyone's, again, this is high school, everyone's questioning themselves. There are lots that are these boys are sensitive about, and I think it was just more used as a comedic bit than it really was any saying into his character.
But now that you're talking about this, and the more I'm thinking about what we know about Frankie Stachino, Frankie the Enforcer, what we know about him is that his father is a famous wrestler. We don't know this yet, but it will be known to us before the end of the season. His father's a famous wrestler. He is a sensitive kid who likes to write poetry. I'm sure he probably got assumed to be gay throughout his entire life, and maybe this is just him being like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Is this coming from you right now, bruh? Are you accusing me of being gay right now? Whoa, Frankie! No one's talking about that. Your dad's not here. Maybe
Yeah,
put those feelings behind you."
that's what I'm saying. When I saw that, it made me laugh because that little quote was definitely like a hint of a backstory where you're like, whoa, dude, like, what is home life like, it's just like no one said anything about sexuality. Where are we going with this? And I do see that storyline. Again, if this was made now, we would get an episode specifically dedicated
Sure.
to that misconception and the ability to be sensitive and poetic and creative but not be gay, or be curious, or fluidity, or whatever. It's just like nowadays, if this was made modern, that would definitely be a moment. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and so we have this sensitive character in Frankie. What did you think of Eric in this episode?
I was going to ask you the exact same thing. I actually, so here's the thing. I like Eric this season. We use Eric a lot more this season.
Well, he's part of the school dynamic now, which he wasn't before.
Yeah, he's part of the school dynamic. He's in his zone this season. They really know how to play him up, play Will Friedle up, and so that alone for me makes me like Eric more. In this particular episode, it's a little weird because he's distancing himself from his brother, and he
made Corey sign a contract that morning that he wouldn't talk to him at all throughout any period throughout school because he doesn't have a brother as far
exactly.
as he's concerned.
Yeah, and so see, those things to me, that very much feeds back into who Eric is, but it was a little weird because Eric's like a cool junior for some reason, even though we know that he wasn't. But he does have a car now, so.
Yeah, he has a car and he's older, so he's in a different grade, so I'm sure that makes him a little bit more desirable, especially to Margaret Moreau, who is the actress that he was flirting with, who you might know from Parenthood, Wet Hot American Summer, or as I know her best, Connie from the Mighty Duck movie.
I thought she looked familiar. I didn't look that up, but I'm glad you did. But I do want to talk about, we talked about, of course, my desires to, stay after school with Mr. Turner. But let's talk about time in his class. Let's talk about the way that Mr. Turner teaches.
I really thought this was a great development, because basically what we're seeing is that they were preparing for Feeney. They were like, it's maybe Mr. Turner's Feeney, but worse. And basically what they got was the opposite of Feeney. They got this young guy. They got this really charismatic, funny guy. He appreciates their culture a little bit more. He's not just scoffing at comic books. He's like, oh, wow, this is actually a really great issue.
Yes, it does. An epic journey about a guy just trying to get home alive. In fantasy worlds with characters who have these ancient notions about loyalty and heroism.
Yeah, who wants to read that?
Yeah, apparently you do. What is that, X-Men?
No, it's...
What, I don't know X-Men when I see it? It's a great issue, wasn't it?
But by doing that, there's a teacher now that they can relate to outside of Feeney. Feeney seems like, yeah, it's a more mature, wise, sage opinion, but like when Corey just has a simple question, he's going to go to Jonathan for that. And I think having a little bit of both in his life is really going to create a great balance to him, and also to Feeney to have a character that he can play off of now. Because you have this guy who's going about everything the opposite way that Feeney would go about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think I really liked how, because even though it's been a while since I've seen this episode, the moment Mr. Turner picked up the comic book and he was like, oh, X-Men. And he was like, just kind of immediately was able to relate the material to the Odyssey and kind of get them, kind of, again, trick them into this homework assignment in a very Feeney-esque way, but
100%.
not how Feeney would have done, or not with the way that Feeney would have kind of blew off Corey's interest, just basically what you're saying. And yeah, I just really enjoyed that. And I have to say, in this episode, when we see Mr. Turner with Feeney, it does kind of show, as much as we all love Feeney and we admire him, it does show how Feeney is old school and a little bit stuck in his ways.
But I also think that we'll see how Mr. Turner's approach isn't always great either. Like there's a balance that they kind of represent of old school techniques with new school approaches.
No, I agree with that, but I'm just saying in this particular episode,
Yeah.
Feeney's not the enemy, but it's definitely a thing where I feel that Feeney comes a little too hard on.
He's skeptical.
Yeah.
He's very skeptical of Jonathan's techniques.
Well, he says, which I really do like, he says that it'll be an interesting school year. You know what I mean? Like that, the way that Feeney responds to it.
Let's also go back. Feeney is now the principal of this high school. Can we talk about this for a second?
That was going to be my next point. I absolutely love that you brought it up. So what do you think about that? What do you think about the reveal, which is not really a reveal, but what do you think about the reveal that Feeney...
So in the opening sequence...
yep, I'm glad you brought it up.
Feeney is brought in and he's like complaining that Eric's car is like parked on his lawn or whatever. And I would think that if I were watching the show for the first time, that this is how they're bringing Feeney into the show now that he's no longer the teacher. They're bringing him in more as a neighbor character. Okay, I'm on board with this. But then midway through the show, they flip the script and they're like, oh no, he's also the principal and he also teaches a class. Bruh, I mean, I buy it, but this is the last time I'm going to buy a Boy Meets World.
Well, for me, the problem is that whole thing where it's like, if this is real life and Mr. Feeney got the job and he is on his way to the high school, as you said, he was in their kitchen earlier this morning. Would you not mention it at all? What were you waiting on? This grand moment to like spring it on the kids?
The biggest plot hole in that whole thing is Corey saying that he's been doing nothing but studying high school, and yet he had a schedule in front of him the entire day that had Mr. Feeney's name next to the history class, and he never saw that?
That's not a plot hole because of the fact they do mention when Amy says, you've been doing homework, he goes, it's a metaphor.
Well, no, but he's like, he knew who all the teachers were. Because he even said, like, when Mr. Turner came up, he was like, Eric never mentioned Mr. Turner. So you would just think that, he would have done some research at his own schedule, class
But it
schedule.
also seems that they didn't check their schedule. There's one, Corey did research on the school, and this is Feeney's first.
Oh, yeah, because they were surprised when they didn't have the same second class. They didn't really know what their period after Jonathan's class was.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They didn't look at their schedule. They didn't know who Mr. Turner was. They didn't know that he had history with Mr. Feeney. He didn't know that they were separated. Topanga even kind of says, Topanga was Topanga. She looked it up and she was like, we're all in the same English lit class. But the rest of them didn't really... Like Corey and Sean, they did research for how high school will influence them. They didn't do research for attending high school.
Sure. And the way Corey gets sent to see Feeney in the principal's office is because he was caught trying to be Harley Keiner's bitch instead of being in class. And that's at the point where Frankie gives him the name Johnny Baboon, which he will be referred to as Baboon for the remainder of the season, if I'm correct.
Yes, yes, baboon. I do like the way that Harley says baboon. There's
Well,
something about
again, he comes off
poetic.
so 1950s greaser, and he also, again, 29 years old, minimum 29 years old.
I have to say, one of the things that I wanted to ask was like, who, like, where are all these accents coming from? Even Mr. Turner's accent, I'm like, what is this, a Philadelphia accent? Am I missing?
There is a Philadelphia accent. No one is doing it well. No one is doing it consistently. But I feel like Joey's is the closest.
Okay. It's hilarious to me because the way that Mr. Turner talks, it's just weird. You know, it's just kind of like this bro cha-cha. I can't even explain it, but you have to listen.
Yeah.
Because like when he gives that little speech in after school or whatever.
3 o'clock, guys. It's time to go home. We gotta hose the place down. Who the heck are you? Oh, I'm your worst nightmare. I'm a teacher.
Oh, teacher. No wonder I don't recognize you.
What do you teach? Oh, English, lit, and kickboxing. What seems to be the problem?
Nothing. We were working it out.
Actually, it looks like you're about to pound this kid into the ground. See? That's a problem for me. See, because if one of my students gets killed the first day, I look bad.
Again, I can't take my eyes off of him. Adorable. But it's also like I'm just laughing at the way that he talks, his canter. It's almost like a Christopher Walken type.
Yeah, it's very just like he's doing an impression of someone.
Exactly.
And almost like kind of poetic way. It's like a beatnik.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
would be the
That's what
closest
I'm
vibe
saying.
to it.
Yeah. All right. So, do we want to talk about Corey's whole journey throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really important and cool that they made the story that Jonathan teaches the Odyssey. Like, I just thought that was such a cool way to weave it into the whole structure of going into a new world for the first time, the boys going into high school, encountering new characters, some friends, some foe, getting into all these mishaps and adventures. Like, that's a perfect way to tie in a classic literary tale, and I feel like we'll continue really see Boy Meets World do more and more of this. Way better than we did in the first season, where it seems like sometimes the lesson didn't always correlate to what was going on with the story.
Yeah. Well, so I agree and disagree. I liked the choice of the Odyssey. I think it's a great. It's first of all, it's very stereotypical of first day of high school type book that you would get. The story of the Odyssey does parallel this new journey that we're going on. I liked that. I even liked the idea of Corey later on being able to talk to Mr. Turner and be like, "Hey, does that Odysseus guy ever make it home?" You know what I mean? It's just like
Which I thought was a great way to end the snow cap the episode was bringing it back to the Odyssey. That was the Michael Jacobs moment of the episode.
So, Odysseus, looks like you make it home safely.
Thanks, Mr. Turner. I'll see you tomorrow.
Read the book.
I lived it.
Their comedy in this episode, I just can't get enough of.
I love it. Can I just say, I'm sorry, there was one joke at the beginning that made me I thought was really funny, where Alan's like, no one's going to high school with a plan. No one else has a plan. Immediately, Sean opens the door and goes, Corey, I lost my copy of the plan.
Exactly. No. Again, I laughed the entire episode.
There's so many little small gags and like jokes throughout the thing that, like, even though all of this like huge like story is going on, because it really is kind of a long story. There's not really like a B or C story, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like the thing that I like about this episode and what we just made the connection with the Odyssey is that does tie in. What I don't like about it is they don't really explain how that ties in. You know what I mean? It's just like
you'd have to know the Odyssey to know how it kind of
correct
parallels.
And that's my thing. It's like this, it kind of does that thing where we did complain before, where it's like you mentioned the book, and because you mentioned it, yes, we're seeing parallels, but you aren't really drawing those parallels. You're just kind of...
Well, I will say that they don't always do that, because I feel like they just don't simply have the time to kind of like structure out a lot of these stories. So like when they bring up things like this, or Christmas Carol or Elephant Man or some of these other books that they bring up, they kind of touch on it lightly, just so it helps paint the picture for those who understand it. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna see a lot of deep dives into that.
Yeah, okay. So I'll give you that. It was just that was the complaint of mine that I had. All right. So you have anything else you want to say about the episode?
We talk girls, the entrance of girls and Sean's relationship with girls, because that becomes apparent. Like, there's at the end of the episode, Corey has this confrontation with Harley, and Sean goes to hide in the locker. Eric comes in, he helps Corey out. Jonathan Turner comes in, helps Corey out. They kind of have this moment. Everyone leaves. Corey goes to the back to the locker. Sean is penetrating a girl in this locker. Yes,
He's not penetrating.
No?
They are making out, which they make it very clear that it's just making out. But nonetheless, yeah. First of all, we find out that there is room for two inside these lockers, and then also that they kind of established. It's kind of weird to me, and we will definitely get into this in the next episode. But it's kind of weird to me that they kind of established that Sean, the 7th grader, is already a ladies' man.
Yeah, because he goes up to talk to Eric on Corey's behalf in the cafeteria, and Eric's friends are interested in Sean, which apparently there's a huge age gap there, but they're still trying to flirt with the 7th grader.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think it's that, like, I don't find it a problematic age gap. It's not like, she's a college freshman and he's
No, but he is seen as an equal amongst the older kids.
Exactly, because of his attractiveness. I mean, again, they set up what we're going to have this journey of Corey and Sean throughout high school. So I think it's perfect because before they even actually address it, they just kind of set it up. But it is weird that they are already saying Sean's hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was weird to me. But also, with Sean being hot, we do acknowledge that these characters are getting older and sex is now on the table.
Sex is,
or in the locker.
We're talking about sex, baby. We're talking about you and me. We're talking about all the good things and the bad things that can be.
I'm glad I let you finish that.
So one other thing I wanted to mention about this was that during the showdown that Corey has with Harley Keiner at the end, basically Eric's advice to Corey is, hey, go to the nurse's office and say you're sick. And Corey goes there, he sees those other nerds there, and he's like, yo, I'm not doing this. And so he goes to meet Harley. And Harley's basically like, hey, are you going to run? Are you going to, scream? And Corey says, I would rather be dead than be at the school coward for the next 6 years. Which I just thought was just a huge, growth period for him. He was so fearful this entire time of, getting beat up. And then it finally came to that point where he was like, you know what, if you're going to do it, just do it, because I want to get this over with and enjoy high school. So I just thought that was a really cool moment for him.
It's a cool moment, but to me, it's a mixed signal moment, because what they do is the only reason why Corey comes to that conclusion is because he's hiding out with the other nerds that he's unknowingly been the bully of all day. And we get that little bit, but what he says is, aren't you worried about what people are going to think about you? That's his motivation. His motivation isn't that he understood his own value and that,
You're right. He just didn't want to be perceived as a coward. That's
Exactly.
what it was. It was the perception of him being a coward, not him being a coward.
Exactly. And that's what bothered me about this lesson. I think it's a good lesson to say, you know what? I am who I am. I will face high school head on and, come hell or high water. And I think him standing up to Harley is a great moment for Corey's character. But the motivation that they give for it is that you have these two kids who, by the way, were just like Corey and Sean. The only difference is, to be fair, they've had a slightly rougher day. And they are literally in physical pain in ways that Corey and Sean are not. And even though they agree to sit it out, it is Corey being like, oh, I don't want to be on the same level as you nerds. That's my motivation.
Yeah, I just thought that was really, I guess when you paint it like that, it does kind of cheapen it a bit.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem with it. All right, so anything else?
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The only thing I have to say is that the closing segment is basically the kids coming home, and then just watching TV with Morgan and Alan and Amy. And that was really the moment where I was like, I didn't miss these characters at all, especially Morgan. I felt like she was extra useless now that we're outside of the home dynamic completely. Because I feel like the reason we saw the home dynamic so much was because that's where Corey and Eric had interactions. Now that Eric's brought into the school dynamic, there's almost zero reason to go home unless it's to involve the parents. Why is Morgan even there now?
Well, first of all, we will handle that in a few. But also, one of the not issues, I think the difference is season 1, we talked about this, especially when you watch the first episode of season 1, it's a different show with a different goal. Season 1 is a dad and a son story. It is about Corey and his relationship with Alan and his relationship with Mr. Feeney. Those are the two most important relationships for Corey in season 1. In season 2 is when we start to really pivot towards him being a teenager and his priorities are just different. So the family really is secondary. And we use them when we need them, but they are just no longer, they won't get as many storylines as they used to.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I really kind of wish that Morgan got Judy Winslow, but
you didn't like Morgan in this episode. I was going to ask you. I like the little scene that she got, like right here. I think it's perfect. I think it's the perfect amount of using Morgan, and we don't need a second more.
But to me, when they just use her for that one like closing bit, that's when I'm just like, gosh, like she's basically a parrot. Like she is just a character to say something cute and funny, and that's it. Like
she's
I don't know.
Cool. I mean, like
maybe it'll improve, but yeah.
All right. So let's bring up two things. One, do you have a bruh moment for this episode? Like the bruh moment for those who are new to this are
the moment that didn't sit well
or do not stand up, just compared to 2018.
Yeah, something that is like it was cool but isn't cool. Then I'm gonna say just like the approach to bullying in general. The fact that like even at the end, Jonathan is seeing Harley Keiner basically threaten to kill both the Matthews boys, and he basically is just like, "Oh, just go home." And even when Harley's like, "Dude, could I fight you?" He's just like, "No, you couldn't. Just go home." It's like, this kid clearly needs to not be in this environment. He needs some counseling. He needs something. Way too chillax about the whole thing. This guy is 29 years old. He has been in high school long enough. He clearly has some built up emotions, especially about chicken. I just don't think he belongs in this environment. So that's, to me, was the bro moment.
All right, so we kind of hit on it earlier, and I laughed and I really enjoyed it. But my bro moment this week is with Frankie, because that moment was, it really did take me out and be like, that was the moment where I was like, oh, 2018 would explore this completely different. And as you mentioned, was this used just for laughs, or are they making a commentary or whatever? You would have to explain that joke a little bit nowadays. But at the exact same time, I do think that it was done well enough, and it's also vague enough to where you can't really tell if it was supposed to be demeaning or not. They don't make a commentary on being gay. It's really more just like Frankie, as Frankie says, I just need a moment, and he goes,
I just need a moment. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that's another thing when he goes, oh, it's that boy from when you were gay. And
yeah. If he goes in the bathroom, I just need to think, guys.
Again, I think that as funny as it is definitely something that would have to be handled differently nowadays.
Well, I feel like that was just a time period in which, like, you could use gays just to be a joke of a show, and people are like, oh yeah, we're on board with that. Like, let's have the boys dress in drag. Let's have like all these like other like hints towards femininity being and a man being less than, all these other concepts of the 90s that just I don't feel like age well at all.
Oh, we are going this season, if you are prepared for it, or not prepared for it, get prepared, because this season we will be exploring toxic masculinity, because
masculinity is throughout the entire season.
Yeah, there is a lot of we kind of dealt with it a little bit with Alan last season, but This season, we get a lot of training for Corey of what it means to be a man.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the good thing is, I will say, they do kind of balance expectations or tropes with a more positive way. A more modern technique of like thought about sexuality and masculinity. They do that, but they still present the quote unquote norm.
Yes, and I think that's what's going to happen is that Corey, on his approach to become a man, is going to encounter all of these other ideas that people have about what it means to be a man. Ultimately, he forms his own opinion, which I'm hoping I remember to be, the best approach.
Yeah.
However, he definitely encounters a bunch of like misinformation and a lot of just machismo that he tries to bring on himself that just doesn't feel genuine to himself.
And that's
But
one
I don't
thing I
know.
like. They do
Yeah.
point out that it may not be for Corey, but the thing that I'm saying is they definitely position it as the norm or the proper way. And then Corey kind of discovers that if it's not for him, that's okay as well.
Yeah.
Which is mixed messages. All right. So Feeney taught me, what is the lesson of this episode?
You know what? Okay, so I thought about this. I think it's very similar to the Odyssey itself, where there isn't like one lesson as much as just like sometimes you just have to like an adventure is going to approach itself and you just need to go through it with your head up. Like he was timid about high school. He was worried about the entire thing, and that he ended up getting through it with his head held high, even though it was a crazy adventure, and that he now knows that he can tackle high school. And I think that's ultimately the lesson that Corey's supposed to be walking away from in this episode.
I agree. I was going to say the exact same thing. If you look at my notes, my Feeney taught me it's blank because I was going to say the Feeney taught me there's no one lesson here. It's that, hey, we're starting a journey. And this is step one.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see where the show's going to go, especially with the next few episodes.
Oh, it gets so good. I'm really happy that we're here. I'm happy that we're doing this again. Let's get into grades. What grade are you giving this?
I'm giving this episode a B plus.
Oh, shut up! That's so crazy. I have B plus on my notes. B plus.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because it's a good episode, but it's like if this was an episode in season 1, it would have been an A plus for sure. But I gotta say, you know me, I'm hesitant to give out good grades right off the bat.
Yeah, so
you gotta have some room to grow.
It's funny to me because you grade on the scale of I'm thinking ahead of all the episodes that we have, and I'm saving my A's for like the really A-worthy episodes in my mind. Whereas I always grade for like what we got today and then compared to what we've seen previously. So to me, this is a B plus episode because it's great story and great comedy, but it also kind of half-asses the connection to the Odyssey. So, you know what I mean?
I also think it lacks in the fact that it's an origin story where we're constantly being introduced to new characters. And just like with any origin story, like Batman Begins is good, but Dark Knight is where it's at. So I just feel like once we get through all these character introductions, we can really get into some good meat to chew on.
That was kind of a stretch, but I'll allow it.
Please, yeah.
Okay, and the final bit. So we are doing something new this season where we are going to have homework, where we kind of give you our recommendations and references and just things that overall we think you should check out. So I got this idea from a podcast that I guest starred on called Tim Talk, which is the Batman the Animated Series.
Which is podcast. Such an amazing idea for a podcast.
Oh, it's really, I had a really great time. So basically that is my homework assignment for you guys. Check out Tim Talk. It's really good. I really think you'll enjoy it. And TC, what do you got?
Well, I just saw Deadpool 2. I really, really enjoyed it. I think people should go see it if they enjoyed the first one. What I would recommend is not listening to the Kanye West album.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say that, but like I'm a huge Kanye West fan. Me and CJ both are. Like we talk about him all the time, but so disappointed in this Ye album, and I just, guys, I don't know. Don't waste your time with it.
Very, very. Yeah, honestly, I was gonna say, I was gonna mention the Kanye album, but like I didn't know how to preface it without promoting it. But like your way was fine too. It's just like do yourself a favor, pick any other Kanye album, and
Yeah, just like I don't know. I mean, you guys can comment and let me know what you think, but I was very disappointed by just Kanye in general this last like 6 months or so. So was really hoping the album would be a payoff, and it just wasn't.
Nope, it was not. All right, so that is our episode. Thank you for listening to Bro Meets World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, or Stitcher. Make sure to leave us a rating. We love that you guys have given us ratings before. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Bro Meets World, or email us at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Ceej. That's XTRACEEJ. And TC?
You can find me at my Instagram at @abraverme. I'm also getting back into MySpace, guys. I had some information stolen from me through Facebook, so I decided to go backwards. So if you guys would like to join me on the train to return to MySpace, please find me at returntomyspace.facebook.com. And yeah, let's get on that together, guys.
Is that even a thing? Tell me your line.
Yo,
Okay.
we'll figure it out together, guys.
All right. Well, remember to dream, try, and do what, TC?
Dream, try, and do good, guys.
All right. Later, bros.
Later, bruh.